Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. This is Tim Mills here with the Harmonic Atheist YouTube channel. And I just wanted to give a brief update on the channel and on my personal life as well. Uh, totally wanted to start with the good news of hitting the 5,000 subscriber mark. That is, every time we hit a benchmark like that, it's encouraging. And I'm excited to see what happens in the next year or two to see how this thing grows. And a lot of people are giving so much support to the concept behind what I'm doing, trying to empower just regular people to share their stories. And I appreciate so much all the support. Appreciate all the people who've been coming on the channel and all the people who said they're ready to come on the channel. The issue is more, as you know, just the lack of time. We all lack enough time to do everything we want to do. And so that's certainly the case for me as well. I would love to interview people every day, every single day. I'd love to do another interview. But at the moment, it's just like 1 or 2 a week max. And I'm having a little bit of trouble getting caught up with some of the older interviews that I've already done and just need to edit them and get them ready. But I'll go into more detail on that shortly. But just want to start again by saying thank you for your support. It's been so cool to see the just influx of emails and messages and comments. People are coming at me from more ways than I can count in terms of just all the ways that they want this to grow and to support what I'm doing. In terms of the future, I did want to give a little bit of an update there for the channel here. And then again, I'm going to go into a little bit of my kind of personal story of what's going on there, because a lot of you have asked. And so if anybody wants to kind of check out after the YouTube channel update, that's fine. This isn't really planned. I'm not sure what I want to say yet. I'm just going to try to do a little stream of consciousness. So if that isn't your cup of tea, that's totally fine. But I know a lot of you have reached out and said, how are you doing? Many of you know my situation enough to know that it's been a rough journey. And I appreciate the people who've asked me, how are you doing? And so I just wanted to give a little update on that, and I hope it's helpful. Again, for those of you who want to stay for that. And also, I don't know what I'm going to say, so fair warning. I may use some cuss words. I may get into some topics that might not be appropriate for kids, so enough said on that. Anyway, the channel, the goal right now is to focus on continuing to just get as many interviews as possible. I've got a lot that I've already done. I mean, a lot that I just have to edit them and publish them. Almost anything you see at the moment happened about 3 to 4 months ago in terms of interviews. So this one's more live because I'm just doing it, or it's more recent because I'm doing it today and going to publish it within a day or two. But in terms of regular interviews that you see, most of them happened many, many weeks ago. And that frustrates the daylights out of me because I want to publish stuff quickly. Most interviews that people do, they see them, within that week on the channel, or they're live where you're literally, it's as of the moment you say it, it's on YouTube. I have reasons that I don't do live interviews. Some good reasons that I've thought through. I may someday change that, but for now it's working fine. But I do appreciate being able to edit, and some people have told me they appreciate that they were able to ask me, hey, can you edit that part out or this part out? And that's totally, something I want to value. But in terms of going forward, apart from the interviews and hopefully catching up on them, the big project, many of you have asked me, how's it going? Can we see it yet? It's nowhere near ready to be seen, but it is starting. And that's another reason that I'm slowing down a teeny bit on what I'm producing in terms of the YouTube content. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a project that started out as a focus on Enoch. And for anyone that has listened to my videos enough, that my focus is very heavy on Enoch. And a lot of other people's too. It's not like it's my research project that I'm coming up with stuff that no one else is. A lot of people are focused on Enoch, and for good reason. I just want to bring it more to everyone's attention as to why we all should be talking about it a lot more. If we're focused on where did this book called Christianity, where did this book called the Bible and the New Testament, where did Christianity come from? So that's where this started from. The question of, does the New Testament quote the book of Enoch a lot? And the answer is, yeah, it does. I think that a lot of Christians would be surprised if you said that. They'd say, I don't think that's probably true. That's probably not accurate. It might have a little allusion here or there to similar concepts. Similar concepts, of course, they're people of God talking about things that people of God talk about. There's going to be some crossover. It's not quoting it. Yet it is a lot, a whole lot. And I've discovered that there are pockets of people, Christians and different Jewish people as well, but Christians who basically acknowledge that very strongly, and they will basically try to explain it away in a way that they merge it. They just say, well, that's what the people of God were talking about. And there's no real issue with the fact that Enoch isn't canonical, but it's quoted over and over dozens and dozens and dozens of times, well over 100 times in the New Testament, as well as other, apocryphal deuterocanonical books. But they just make some kind of argument about it, why it's quoted so much. Or they some people say, well, it should have been canonized. We had some really weird stuff happen in church history, and they made a big mistake. Martin Luther, he later said that there were some books that should have been in, and so it should have been out. Martin Luther strongly suggested that there were mistakes in what the early church decided. And Christians today can do the same thing. They can say, yeah, the early church made a really big mistake. Enoch is absolutely canonical. So my original project was just to focus on Enoch. And it expanded into, well, it quotes Jubilees a lot, it quotes Maccabees a lot, it quotes this and that. And so it kind of expanded to, let's just list all the places that it quotes these deuterocanonical apocryphal books, mostly Second Temple Judaism books, the kind of intertestamental period. And it expanded a little bit further because I noticed there's a whole bunch of quotes from philosophers, pagan philosophers, not just where it's directly kind of clear to everybody in Acts, but all throughout the epistles and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff there. But as it began to kind of evolve, and a lot of the background for that work is already done, I just have to clean it up and get it presentable. But I realized that there's something else that's really necessary here. And that is that people are looking at the origins of Christianity now that they've escaped, or maybe for some people that they're still kind of in it and wondering if they should escape. But there's a lot of people saying, there's a whole bunch more here that I just don't know about. And they want to know about it. But a lot of it takes a lot of time. I mean, a ton of time to study it, to read through it, to figure out what's good scholarship, what's not, to figure out what should be included and what should be kind of like, well, that's just conjecture. Could have been that way, but who knows? You're just making stuff up that maybe we'll find evidence for it, maybe we won't. But looking for the stuff that's more the golden nuggets, the stuff that's really important that most scholars would agree on, and starting to put the pieces together. And so it evolved into a huge project. I mean, it's basically a PowerPoint, Google Slides, so that it can be easily updated and shared with everybody. But it's going to include topics such as, I'm just going to scroll through here some of the slides that we're going to be looking at in the next, hopefully, year or two. It's going to start by talking about things like the idea of mythology and legend, like what is it and how does it work? What are the recurring motifs? Certainly things like the hero's journey and all that. We're going to be talking about syncretism, the whole layering and masking and blending and editing of Christianity, kind of like you would edit a picture in Photoshop. What things are being laid on top of each other and blended and edited out and all that. We're going to talk about mimesis and analogy. If you're not sure what mimesis is, it's where somebody has a book or a story and someone else uses a whole bunch of ideas from it, sometimes even so close that you can tell they're copying right from it. We're going to talk about basic New Testament origins, just stepping back from the whole thing, but the timeline of world religions, the timeline of Judaism and Christianity specifically. We're going to talk a lot about ancient cosmology, a deep dive into canons and canonicity, the New Testament manuscripts, the forgeries, corruptions, and interpolations, the dating of the New Testament books, how they copied again from the pseudepigraphical, apocryphal, deuterocanonical books. That'll be a whole subsection if you want to go see that. We're going to dive into how those books were not just copied, but it's the concepts, how they conceptually influenced Christianity, how the New Testament copied from other philosophers and other religions. Again, we're going to dive deep into the Enochian worldview, the Watchers, Yehuel, Metatron, all those big names. We're going to talk about the Gospel of Judas and the Sethians, Second Temple Judaism in general, the Maccabees, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Essenes, the Gospels and Acts and how they're mythology. We're going to dive deep into that. The dying and rising Savior gods idea, how the Gospel writers copied from from Old Testament narratives. A lot of copies where they're making up a new Moses, a new Elijah, a new Joshua, a new Israel, new everything, and they're just taking the old stories and kind of crafting a new one. The synoptic problem, gospel discrepancies, how the gospels copied from playwrights and poets, how they copied from Sumerian influence, Sumerian religious beliefs, Egyptian beliefs, Zoroastrian beliefs, Greek religion and philosophy, Roman religion and philosophy, Mithraic religion and philosophy, Buddhist. If you're not familiar with that, it's pretty cool. Buddhist as well as Hindu religious beliefs. We're going to talk about the Mandeans, the Talmud and the Mishnah. We're going to talk about how philosophers and cult leaders of that era had a specific influence on Christianity, the mystery cults. We're going to talk about how the New Testament was severely influenced and copied from ideas about kings and leaders of that day. We're going to talk about Philo, a lot about Philo, Philo's rules for allegorical interpretation, and how that weaves right into Luke and Acts. The Apostle Paul, that's going to be an endless discussion, whoever he was. The kingdoms of Edessa and Irania, if you're familiar with Ralph Ellis, we're going to dive deep into that. Roman Providence, James Valiant, and creating Christianity, things like that. We're going to talk about Josephus, of course. Again, lots from Plutarch. We're going to talk about Midrash and Pesher, esotericism and gnosis, goddesses, the Sophias, the other Gospels, the other books of Acts, the other epistles. We'll dive deep into gematria, numerology, isopsepsy, I'm probably just mispronouncing that word, sacred geometry and Kabbalah, astrotheology. That'll be absolutely huge, and we're going to knock that one out of the park. We're not going to let people keep on knocking Acharya. Acharya is awesome. She did amazing things. We're going to put her back on the pedestal she belongs on. That's DM Murdoch, if you're not familiar with her. We're going to talk about psychedelics and the origins of Christianity, how they affected it. We're going to talk about the lack of historical evidence for Jesus, the date issue, when did Jesus actually live, time shifts and things like that, the family of Jesus, his brothers and sisters, how in general the Jesus character was an amalgamation of all these other stories. We're going to talk about pseudonymity, where names are being changed, where you read a character, you see their name, and you find out they are actually not mythology, they're someone else. The name was just changed to protect the innocent or guilty, as the case may be. We're going to talk about the decades between Jesus and Paul's epistles, talk about Constantine, of course, church history, the church fathers, and then it's going to go kind of backwards. It's doing this in reverse a little bit. I may at some point switch it up, but I'm going to go back to the Old Testament next, talk about Old Testament origins, polytheism, henotheism, monotheism, where ancient Israel came from, ancient Canaanite religion, the origins and evolution of the Yahweh characters, not character, but the Yahwehs, Asherah, the Garden of Eden, of course, Noah, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Egypt and the Exodus, the Temple and the priesthood, the Messiahs, the end times, the apocalypse, Masculine. We're going to dive deep into, we're going to zoom back out at that point and say, now that we've kind of, and this, I'm skipping over a lot here, but once we've gone deep into all these little pockets of information, we're going to talk about Bible contradictions, failed Bible prophecies, the horrific Bible stories and teachings, human sacrifice in the Bible. We're going to look at Jesus from a Jewish perspective. What does Judaism have to say about Jesus and Christianity? We'll do some fun one-offs about the mythology behind Christmas and Easter, the bizarreness of Christianity, some of the more weird stuff that's in there, like the magic dust water that will create an abortion, the Urim and the Thummim, kind of like rolling the dice to see what God's will is, casting lots, a bunch of weird things. Biblical archaeology, we'll dive into that. We're going to dive as well after that into kind of zooming even further back to just our discussions, the logical fallacies of Christianity, how the upbringing, culture, and pressure around people cause them to believe. We're going to do a whole section on what if and why not. Like, what if this had happened and why not that? I'll tell you more about that when we get there, but that's a fun one. Philosophical objections to Christianity, practical objections to Christianity, science versus faith and dogma. We'll answer objections to atheism. I'm going to do a little bit of a conjecture at the end of how I think Christianity started. Who's actually doing that? Who was the one who put Homer and Plutarch and all these other characters into the Gospels and made up the Jesus character? We're going to do a conclusion, and we're going to do a post-mortem on Christianity. What does this teach us about human nature, about humanity, once we've escaped and realized what this was? We're going to talk about church history in terms of more current times. What are the atrocities that have been done in the name of Jesus, and how we need to deal with that history that we were, that we came from, and in a sense, some of us were almost a part of. We're going to do a deep dive into questions that Christians absolutely need to address. Questions that hopefully will, if they address them honestly, they will say, yeah, this doesn't make sense. This does not add up. We're going to talk again about some general conclusions about Christianity and religion in general. And then the rest of it's going to be about deconversion. The project is going to include an overview of deconversion, what it's all about, why people do it, what the process is like for different people, and just what to expect from it for someone that's like, I don't know what to think, but I think I might actually, I think you might be right. I think Jesus might not be real. He might be a made up character. And this might be all pretend. And this might be mythology. And once you realize it, you realize there's a whole process to go through. We're going to talk about healing and thriving after deconversion, finding community after deconversion, protecting children from Christianity. We're going to talk deeply about sexuality and eroticism after deconversion. And we're going to do a whole bunch of little topical presentations. We're going to talk about changing culture, even politics, getting involved with trying to change our world for the future, trying to end religion as a worldview. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of study resources for people that want to dive deeper. And I'll do a little fun section at the very end for those who are very curious about this whole thing of why I call it Harmonic Atheist, which is related to trading currencies or stocks or whatever, crypto. What is that about? So I'll give people some more background. That's the project, and I have started it. It's many hundreds of slides long. At this point, it gets another 50 to 100 slides longer every single week. I'm working on it like crazy. I want to get it done. It needs to go through a specific process in my mind before it's really presentable, meaning I need to have it crystal clear and cleaned up. I, at that point, then need to solicit some friends and peers who I hopefully will be able to get who some people have already offered to proofread it, to edit it, to check some sources, add sources that I don't have, just add content, and to make suggestions as to how this is going to flow better. And then at that point, my next step is I'm going to actually hire some of the big guns in the atheist and mythicist camps that we're all familiar with. I'm going to actually ask them, what would it take financially for you to actually edit this presentation and to show me where I'm way off, where I'm missing some stuff to make this, stellar. And then I'm going to open it up a little bit further to some Facebook groups to just say, to a couple hundred people maybe, and say, hey, I've gone through, a couple dozen people, including some serious scholars, but now I want people to actually really test it. They test it on just the ground floor. What does this feel like to work through this? Does this help? And then hopefully after maybe 3 or 4 iterations like that, I'll just open it up wide open to anybody to read it. At that point, if I start to get some negative feedback, I won't publish it further. I'll leave it out there, of course, once it's out there, but I'll try to kind of quiet it down for a little bit and take the feedback I get and make it better and take improvements. I take the suggestions very seriously and make it the best it can be. And in a sense, it won't be iterations. It won't be like 1.0, 2.0. It'll just be like constant iterations, people saying, hey, this slide, look at this deck, slide 153. Your source here is not a good one. That's been debunked, whatever. And I'll check into that, see if it has been debunked. And if it's not a good idea, I will either leave it there and mark it as, potentially not accurate, or I'll just remove it altogether if it's way off. But it's going to go through that kind of process. I want it to be absolutely stellar. The goals are, number one, for those of you who have deconverted and you're like, I just want to understand what I was in. The Stockholm Syndrome. Who kidnapped my heart and my mind for 20, 30, 40 years? Who had me? What system was this? Who was my kidnapper? Why did I love my kidnapper so much? We want to understand what we were stuck in. Number two, we want to be able to help other people who are questioning or should question, to say, do you realize when you read the story of this or that, the likelihood is off the charts that they're copying from this story or that story. That's just bare bones. For example, if you're reading the story of Jesus's feet being washed, the chances of that coming from Homer's Odyssey, from the part where Euryclea washes Jesus's feet, is off the charts. In my mind, 99.9% probable that they copy that straight out of Homer. You're looking at Jesus standing on the mountain, looking down at the water, at his disciples in the boat, and he goes down and he walks in the water. They're terrified as he's coming. the likelihood that that's coming from Zeus sending Hermes, who walks in the water with his golden slippers, and as he's coming towards the people, they get terrified that he's coming. The chance that that's copying from that kind of stuff, or that the clearing of the temple from stuff in Maccabees with Judas Maccabeus, the likelihood a lot of this being copied from other sources is very, very high. And if you look at just one, you're like, well, that's a good, really good parallel, but that could be ironic. It could just be an irony. But we're not going to line up 5 or 10 or a dozen or a couple dozen. We're going to line up hundreds of them to the point where you're like, there's no way. There's no way they didn't copy this stuff. There's no way that this isn't based hugely out of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. There's no way that this did not come from Euripides' Bacchae. There's no way that this didn't come from Plutarch. There's no way that this didn't come from Pythagoras. It just is off the charts obvious. And we're gonna lay it out. But part of my goal with the dynamic is not just to create this content, but also to say, if you are looking at this for the first time and you're saying, I don't know what you're talking about. What is sacred geometry? What is gematria? What is astrotheology? Who is Josephus? Who is Plutarch? And why do I care? What does Homer's Iliad and Odyssey have to do with the Bible? They're not related, or I don't understand. I'm overwhelmed, and I frankly don't have time. Maybe you're like me. You've got a bunch of little kids. You work full time. The idea of spending hours and hours and hours and hours watching videos on, Myth Vision or Gnostic Informant or Dragons in Genesis or other good sources, or going to Neil's blog Vridar, or going to all these other books, going to Dr. Carey's book, big books that are like, they're wonderful in one sense, but they're overwhelming if you just don't have time. And so my goal is to say to anyone who doesn't have time, and to anyone who is totally new to this stuff, or like, I've never heard of this. You're overwhelming me on day one. I'm going to put it on the most basic level so you can skip through quickly and see how this relates. There'll be slides that just say this relates to Christianity because of this. If you want to dive deeper, go ahead. If you don't, then go but one level back up to the bigger picture. You can do the double clicks where you want to. The deep dives are there, the proof is there, and there'll be links to resources and further reading if you want to dive even deeper, to step out of my presentation. The goal, of course, in one sense, is also to focus on helping people escape and protecting our children. You've heard me say that many, many times if you're someone that follows my channel. Being able to protect children is front and center at this. I've got 4 little ones. My oldest one just turned 7, and they can go to church. So my wife's still a believer, and I'm going to talk more about some of that stuff in a little bit, but they can go to church and hear a story and come home, and already for many of these stories, they can tell you where it came from, where it was copied from. And they're going to just keep on learning more and more and more. And I'm going to create this in a way where maybe not a 7-year-old can understand it, but hopefully like a 10-year-old can understand all these concepts. I want this to be deep enough for, a 30, 40-year-old person. I also want it to be simple enough for a 10-year-old to say, yeah, I can read through some of this and understand how they copied the Jesus character from other characters. There's obviously the personal goal for me, and this is where I want to get a little bit more personal. I don't know what to think about my situation. When you deconvert, many of you have told me, beautiful stories where you deconverted and your spouse deconverted at a very similar time, within a year of each other. And I just say, awesome, kudos, great, great, great. I hope that happens. I hope I hear so many more stories like that. But I've also equally heard stories where it's the opposite. Even somebody told me even this week that his deconversion is causing a divorce. Other people have said their marriages are all but over because of their deconversions. And that hurts so much. And I want to take this to the project one more time and then go on to my personal story. This project is for those people, including myself, as a way of, for the people that have a spouse where the spouse just doesn't understand or is not interested in reading 20 books like you have. Look, reading through Bart Ehrman's books, David Fitzgerald's books, Dr. Robert Price's books, Dr. Carrier's books, all these, endless. I could keep quoting authors, but a lot of other resources that people could easily go to say, yeah, this Bible stuff does not add up. Some people have told me that I'm wrong in even hoping for change in other people's perspectives and loved ones' perspectives. And I will grant to them that I am coming more and more to see that it's possible that all these efforts will have no impact on my personal situation with my loved ones. I'm still going to do it anyway. What I mean by that is, I think that if you line this up correctly and someone actually walks through it, it's going to be really hard to ignore that this stuff looks like mythology. It frustrates me to no end that you think, well, what if I did do all this work for a year or two on this project and get all this feedback, and I get all this scholarly assistance and community assistance, and it's just an awesome presentation at the end. It's just people are like, oh my goodness, where was this all this time? I could have used this for so long. This is fantastic, and hopefully someone else takes it to the next level after me. But once it's there, it's like the iPhone. Like once you have it, you're like, how could we have ever not had this? This was great. And it changes everybody's perspectives once they see it for the first time. I think this is going to be one of those things where once people realize we can get all the proof of the mythology in a simple package that still dives deep, but keeps it simple and explains it and shows people there's a really good reason to leave. Not like I hated my pastor, I was angry at this, God gypped me of this, I wasn't happy, I got sick, I got fired, I'm just angry at God. No. We're not talking about emotional reasons to leave Christianity. There's some good reasons to leave, but I'm talking about the actual origins. Like, where did this thing come from? And I think that if nothing else will take you out, if you can't look at something as silly and ridiculous as circumcision or child brides or land theft or slavery and beating your slaves, advanced misogyny and patriarchy, if you can't look at that stuff, or blood magic and scapegoating and this whole death cult, eating flesh and drinking blood every Sunday, if you can't look at all kinds of aspects of this and say, this is really weird, this is really bad, if you can't do it already, then maybe just understanding where it came from would be like the one thing that would be the missing piece. Because you could say, well, yeah, but if God commands slavery, then it must be okay. If God commands child brides, it must be okay. If he commands circumcision, it must be okay. God's ways are higher than ours. But if you understand where this came from and you're like, holy smokes, this stuff isn't divine. They're copying it from other sources. So I'm actually not into Christianity. I'm into an ancient pagan Egyptian religion. I'm into an ancient Greco-Roman mystery cult. That's not what I thought this was. And once you get there, if nothing else shakes you up like it should have shaken me up, admittedly, and didn't. But eventually the pieces come together and you're like, yeah, why was I not? Why? This should have been more obvious. I'm going to aim for that. I'm going to hope for that for myself, in terms of my personal situation. If loved ones don't care, they don't either use it, read through it, or they just kind of skim through it in 30 seconds and say, oh, whatever, heard it all before, I don't care. At least I'm going to be able to say in my mind, I gave my best shot. For those of you that want to tell me that it won't make a difference in the world, drop in the bucket, drop in the ocean. I've heard it enough from enough people to say I respect that opinion, and I totally, if you want to claim the right and whatever in 3 or 5 years to say I told you so, you have full rights to do it. I'm still going to give it my best shot, and I'm still going to remain somewhat hopeful. But if I do this the way that I want to do it and I knock it out of the park, this is a grand slam and it still makes absolutely no difference in the world. I'm definitely going to feel like, what else can I do? What else can I do? I've done everything to the nth degree. I've done more than I've seen anyone else do. I haven't seen anybody do this. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of slides, giving deep dive and yet simple overviews at the same time. People, I'm reading endless books. I don't see other people trying to do this. I don't see people trying to say, let me put it on a silver platter for you so that you don't have to do too much work. It's just right here. Just look at it. You can flip through to whatever floats your boat. Hit the high points. You're like, I don't care about Josephus. I want to read the Homeric stuff. Where's he copying Homer? Where is Mark copying Homer? I don't care about that. Pythagoras interests me. Show me Pythagoras. Whatever it is. If I put this on a silver platter, as detailed but as simple as I can, and edit the daylights out of it to the point that it is really honed and it still makes no difference, I'll walk away satisfied though that I hopefully will have helped a lot of other people, even if it doesn't help my situation personally. So, my situation personally, it's not very good. I didn't plan out my notes as what I'm going to say, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes. When you deconvert, I understand from the other person's perspective, it looks like you have betrayed the God of the universe. It looks like you have become the enemy, especially when there's kids involved. It looks like you have left your first love, become truly an apostate heretic. It's scary to them thinking about what you just did. And the fact that it's final, you're not saying, well, I'm sort of investigating it. Like, no, I'm out. You could just as soon pull me back into this as you could get me to pray to Dionysius or to Isis, to Ra, to Thor. This is mythology. And the more that you try to claim that your mythology is somehow different, try to pull that whole, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis garbage, that this is the one true myth. You're just making yourself look more and more foolish, and I'm going to prove it. And we're going to try to, on that note, to really nail home the apologists. We want to sideline the Christian apologists. We want to get them to look like the charlatans that they are. They are charlatans, and they're hurting people, and we want them to be sidelined. We want people to look at them and say, these guys are not worth listening to. They're not telling us the full story, and they're trying to be that, Wizard of Oz behind the curtain and trying to tell you, don't look too much. We're going to show you, we're going to pull the curtain wide, way back. And when you do, the Wizard of Oz apologists, they look so foolish. They really do. And I'm hopeful that some of this stuff will help on that note. But going back to my story, I get it that spouses are not sure what to do. You married to honor Christ. You married to honor Jesus with your heart, your mind, and your soul, and your family, your future, money, everything. Everything belongs to Jesus. Everything comes from Jesus. Everything belongs to Jesus. We are his servants. We are his slaves. He is our loving master. And we're here to bring people into the kingdom and to glorify him no matter what else happens. And all of a sudden you say, none of that's ever been real. None of it. This Jesus character is not real. Yahweh's not real. This is all a man-made construct. We've been effectively worshiping something as good as worshiping Dionysius. It's not there. It's just a story. And to you, as the deconverted person, it's the most joyous thing because your mind is finally free. And all these splinters in your mind that didn't make sense, they suddenly add up. Like, that's why this didn't make sense. That's why this didn't make sense. That's why God never showed up. That's why God's will never seemed clear, because it was irrelevant. None of this was relevant. It's all irrelevant. None of it ever mattered. None of it did. Not a minute. It was all just a distraction from you actually starting your real life. You were stuck in a prison for your mind. You're glad and they're horrified. You think that Christianity is the most bizarre thing ever, and you're ashamed at yourself for being stuck in it, and you feel stupid for not having seen through the facade much earlier. And they're horrified that you would not love and worship and bow the knee to the one God, and that you would be willing to risk everything. Pascal's wager, you're willing to risk everything and go to hell over this? Come on. Even if Christianity isn't real, isn't it still the best life ever to do this? What if you're wrong? And you think through all those issues and you peel back the layers of the onion over and over, and you get to a point where you're saying, I can't live this lie anymore. This Jesus stuff is not real. Yahweh's not real. The Holy Spirit's not real. None of this is real. These were just some really bad men who started some stories, and other bad men kept it going. Other bad men, usually men, some women, but usually bad men with the desire for power and authority, kept on evolving the story. A lot of political stuff going on too with Constantine and other parts of church history, but this is just people. This is just people talking. And humans have been around for a long, long, long time. And we have like 3 to 5% of our human history recorded. And so 90+% of human history isn't even recorded. We don't know what happened, but at some point in the last 3 to 5% of human history, some people decided that when they looked at the stars and they looked at the crops and they looked at human births and they looked at different activities going on, that there was something bigger going on in the universe. There was not just people, evolved animals, that there was something about this that was somebody was orchestrating things, and somebody was writing in letters in the sky, as it were, through the stars, and in the things that happen in the flooding and in the storms and in the volcanoes and so forth. And as these stories evolved, people became powerful because they became the voice and the spokesman usually, most likely for many of these cultures, the spokesman for God, for the gods. And so it was very clear that very early on there was power in speaking on behalf of God. And as these things changed and evolved, it just became institutionalized. We have inherited institutionalized forms of fear and mind control. That's what this whole thing has always been about. People want you to be afraid so that you will listen. And that's maybe where some of it started, but eventually it just gets to a point where it's more of a worldview issue and a comfort zone and an issue of not bucking the status quo. Obviously, if you have a parent who is teaching you to love Jesus, they're not necessarily trying to instill control. Maybe, generations before they were, but that parent's just trying to love you into the kingdom of God. So now the issue is less about control and fear factors, although hell plays a part in it. But now it's just an issue of we're just sure we're wrong. We're sincerely wrong, but we're sincere. We really believe this stuff. And the idea of bucking what everyone around you believes is so difficult for our parents, for ourselves. The idea of saying all these people that I value and love, they're dead wrong on the biggest issues of life. You don't question that. That's hard stuff to question. And that's where we've inherited this. We've inherited this situation. And I get it that spouses at this point are horrified that we are questioning the status quo. It upsets the apple cart across the board, and I totally relate. If the roles were reversed, now we're still a Christian, and my spouse had deconverted first, I'm sure there's a part of me that, you can never say what could have been, but I think there's a part of me that at least at first would have been horrified. But I also like to think and hope, and this is conjecture, but I like to think that if roles were reversed, I would have at least said, number one, I'm going to respect the fact that you have reasons. I may have said it sarcastically or something like, you think you have good reasons to leave. I don't think you do, but you think you do, and I understand that and I respect it. But I think I would have, just my personality, knowing myself, I think I would have said, I'd like to know what you know. I don't want this to be just you have a whole bunch of things you've studied, you have a whole bunch of information over there in this, your bookshelf, whatever, in your mind. And I don't care what's on that bookshelf of your mind. I think I would have been the kind of person that would have said, I'd like to know what's on that bookshelf if you don't mind sharing it. If you really feel like you've done all this digging, all this unraveling, could I see it? Could I see what happened? Because, if you love somebody and you want the best for them, if you really think that they're on their way to hell and that what they've got on their mental bookshelf is just a whole bunch of lies, then you'd want to understand the lies so that you could maybe, in certain conversations, help them to unwind those lies and get back to the truth. I think I would have done that. I think I would have had a sincere drive and a passion to understand why my spouse was no longer bowing her knee to Christ. Being that the roles are reversed, it is shocking to me to no end, that the response is, I don't care what you're learning. I don't care what you've ever learned. None of what you have ever come up with and said matters. And the idea at this point of me sharing much with my spouse about what I've come across and what I continue to come across, I I struggle because I'm just naturally the kind of person that wants to share what I'm learning. But I know that she doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't want to hear any of it. And so I have to train myself to just shut the hell up. Keep it to yourself. Whatever you're learning, it's between you and yourself and this massive project. That hurts. It hurts a lot that loved ones just don't want to know. Especially when they know, number one, that they think that your eternal soul is at stake. And number two, they knew that you knew, according to their theology and worldview, that your eternal soul is at stake. So you had a lot of reason to stay and you still left. And they think you have a lot of reason to come back. So much is at stake. And yet they don't care. You become the enemy. And that phrase, there's no hate like Christian love, it really is true. And I don't know, I didn't see this video, but somebody was posting something about, I think some preacher or some apologist made a comment recently that's if something amounted to that deconversion had become sexy or trendy, deconversion. To me, deconstruction is just kind of picking the pieces apart and maybe adjusting. Deconversion says, I've deconstructed, yes, but I'm out. This is mythology. Deconstruction is like if you're on a train and you're heading to, you're on stop number 1 and you're headed to stop number 10. Deconstruction might be at step 6 or 7. Deconversion, you're off the train. You've gotten off at stop 10 and you're out. Hopefully, a lot of deconstructing people will actually deconvert, realize that there's nothing, you can't salvage Christianity. Liberal Christianity doesn't make anything better. In some ways, it just ignores some of the very horrifying realities of it all. We can still be friends, but I'm going to fight Christianity. I'm going to fight anything that causes psychological abuse to children. Anyway, deconversion isn't sexy. Deconversion isn't easy. It's not trendy. There might be a lot of people doing it in that sense that it's trendy because you see a lot of stories. But people aren't deconverting because it's helping their lives get better. The argument could easily be made that when you deconvert, your life gets much, 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 much worse. And so you say, well, why would you do it then? Well, because the truth matters. The lack of lies, getting lies pushed away from you matters. Having a worldview that accurately reflects reality matters. Healing from really bad ideas matters. Understanding your makeup, the world around you, yourself, your own body, sexuality, your goals in life, setting things straight for the first time. It's like, Christianity is it's like trying to cut a board and you're just like, it's going all over the place. And all of a sudden, for the first time, you've got a straight edge and you can finally cut the board straight. You want to cut it straight. You're tired of all this mess. You're like, this is such a mess I've been in. And you can't not. It's like you can't unsee it. Once you see it, you're like, I can't unsee that. I imagine if you were in a situation where you caught a spouse cheating, maybe even literally caught them cheating, but at least you got undeniable proof. You're like, you can't unsee that. You might be able to heal from it and forgive them maybe salvage the marriage, but in terms of just like you can't go back to treating and seeing them as if they hadn't been unfaithful, right? You caught them, and they're not the same person anymore. You can't undo this. We've caught Christianity in the act. We've caught Christianity with its pants down. You can't undo this. We've seen too much. And the more that the apologists talk, the more that this whole thing looks like it's fraud. It's absolutely fraud. It's mythology. And they're digging the hole deeper. And so keep digging, apologists. You make our job easier. But it's not easy doing this. This is hard work. Number one, you're dealing with your own realization that all the stuff you were banking on isn't there for the future. Eternity is not what you thought it was. The chance that there's an afterlife and that you'll see your loved ones again drops, for many of us, to zero. Some people want to cling to something. I quasi-respect that desire. I certainly wanted it myself. I don't think there is anything that happens. I don't think there's any evidence of that happening. I know people keep pushing me to talk about near-death experiences. I don't think that is what people think it is, but I'll save that for another day. I think we're glorified animals. And I don't think the apes have an afterlife. I don't think the chimpanzees have an afterlife. All the other primates, I mean, if we have an afterlife, then where's their afterlife? Because we're in the same chain of animals. So don't start with us. Start, what's a squirrel afterlife look like? What's a honeybee afterlife look like? Be consistent. If there's an afterlife, then we're not exclusive to this. Everyone gets one. If anyone gets one, everyone gets one. Or at least need to prove why not. I don't think anything happens. I think we're glorified animals, and when our time's up, it's up. We turn back to dust, and it's a bit of a nihilistic perspective. There is no real goal because there's no goal maker. There's no purpose. You get to create a purpose in a sense, but there's no purpose. You don't win life if you do it one way or another. I personally have things that I think make life beautiful, and I want to pursue those. So that becomes my goal, but I'm not pursuing things because I have to. I'm pursuing things because I choose to. I have the power in my mind for as long as I've got. But when you leave Christianity, the other hard part of this, besides losing the afterlife and losing the carpet that was under you, the hard part of this is the people around you, the Christians. And for any Christian that seems deluded into thinking that the church just loves people who leave. They just want to love you back to Jesus. I don't know what planet you're living on, but it's not this one. Christians are nasty. Nasty. The both in general, the comments you get, but also in the specific relationships that we have in our homes. The snarkiness, the rudeness goes through the roof, the coldness, the passive aggressiveness. It all skyrockets. I mean, it skyrockets exponentially. Many of you are also dealing with, the issues where you lose all intimacy. It's just gone. But, don't touch me. Don't freaking touch me. You're not a Christian. If you don't love Jesus, then I can't respect you. So there's no way to be close. The constant threat of separation and divorce, the constant sense of them acting like you are irrelevant. Now, I was even reading somebody's story recently where the wife, who was still a believer in that such story, effectively said something to the effect of, if you don't believe anything, then just keep quiet about it. Like I, as a Christian, I'm allowed to keep talking about my faith. If you don't believe, then you have nothing to talk about, so don't talk about it. What the hell is wrong with you people? I'm sorry, but what the hell is wrong with you people? We have everything to talk about. We just escaped our captor. We just clicked into reality for the first time ever. Our eyes just opened. We just saw the world and the stars and the universe and time and ourselves for the first time ever. We have a lot to talk about. You who are Christians, you will be sidelined. You will be the ones who will have less and less and less to talk about, and we will be less interested in the garbage mythology you keep trying to push. It's not going to happen. we will speak up and our voice will drown out the people that try to take mythology and hurt our children with it. And but they think they can, and they push this stuff, and their hatred gets so wickedly wild. And the idea that you lose your sexuality, for some people, it's almost immediate, but for sure over time, you lose it. And people have asked me, how are you doing with that? I mean, I've shared, in different groups, I'm working hard on kind of the creative outlet of erotic stories. I've been working on that for a while. I can't wait to do that, but it's a side project compared to the big one, so it's more of a couple of years away. But I do jot down notes for erotic stories I'm working on. It doesn't make any sense to me, though, the way that they treat this. And it's funny, just as a side note, just dwelling on sexuality for a second. If you were a Christian, right? You're a Christian. You there's injunctions to take care of your spouse, sexually. There's injunctions, whatever, to not go apart. But in the bigger picture, apart from those injunctions, you just know practically as a human, you don't want to send your spouse into the arms of some third party, right? You want your marriage to be strong enough to grow. And it would horrify, I would think, most Christians to say, I am actively stating, like, to you as my spouse, I know you're sexual. I know you think about it all the time. I know you want it all the time. And that nothing's going to just stop your sexuality. It's just like, it's like a heartbeat. It just keeps going and going and going. It's part of who you are. But all that sexual energy, all that sexual drive and desire, don't aim it toward me anymore because you're not a Christian. Well, you're effectively pointing someone saying, well, steer your eyes to that person then, or that person. I would think that Christians would be horrified to intentionally push your spouse's eyes and heart to other people. And I'm not encouraging people who are on the receiving end of that nastiness. I'm not encouraging people to look other places. I'm not looking other places. That is not my point. If you see that as my point, you're misunderstanding. I am not encouraging people to look outside of their marriage for fulfillment. There are times to end marriages, and that's between you and your counselor and so forth. But while you're in your marriage, I encourage you to stay faithful to your promise. But you're still going to be tempted in that sense, and I'm not talking about the biblical sense of tempted, like the sin. There's no such thing as a sin. It wouldn't be a sin if you went outside and had sex outside of your marriage, because there's no such thing as sin. But it's not necessarily a great idea, obviously, for a lot of reasons. While you're married, you've made a promise, so keep your promise. But the other person's also kept a promise, or made a promise, right? They made a promise to take care of you and to love you and to do things that intentionally push people. And I'm not talking about just myself here. I'm talking about a lot of people. I'm hopefully that's clear. I'm trying to reflect a lot of emails and conversations I have, but people across the board are being pushed out of their marriages purely because sexuality is shut down, and nobody should ever be, pushing back at that. Sex is something you freely give to someone. Intimacy is something you freely give. The joyfulness of flirtation, something you freely give, and if someone doesn't want to give it, you respect their boundaries and you walk away. You don't force the issue. That's their choice, and just like you have your choices to make, they have their choices to make, and you respect each other 100%. But when people make those choices to say, I'm going to shut you out, I'm going to shut you down, I'm going to build up a wall, 1,000 layers high, don't be surprised when you find out that you've pushed them into the arms of someone else, because that's exactly what you did. You said, take all your sexual energy and push it somewhere else. I'm just repressing it all at the moment, to be honest. I'm just letting it be a sideline issue. I know for some of you that's way too hard. You're like, I can't do that. I've got to be intimate. I've got to enjoy sexuality in my life. I get it. I totally get it, and I hate it. I hate it for myself. I hate it for you. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's painful. It's so painful. And I know some of you are also choosing to be faithful, and which means you're choosing to be celibate. That sucks. It really sucks. Especially when you have no hope. It isn't just like a, well, we have cold and warm period. It's like it's cold. It's nothing but cold. It's over. Um, they've effectively abandoned you. They've abandoned you emotionally, intellectually, um, certainly sexually. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say it enough, but I'm broken for you. I'm broken for myself, obviously, but I'm broken for you all. For any Christians that are, I don't think Christians watch my channel that much, but for any Christian that would care to watch it and it's watched this far, I hope this helps you break the bubble a little bit, burst the bubble, this concept that Christians or that people leave Christianity because it's cool. It's not cool. It's not cool to do it. It's heartbreaking, but there's no choice because Christianity is mythology. Yeah, enough said on that. I'm doing what I can to protect my kids' minds. They know so much about mythology, and over the next 3 to 4 years, they're hopefully going to know a lot more. They're going to know more. You probably already do know more, but they're for sure going to know more soon about the origins of Christianity than I did after decades in the church and Christian school and homeschooling, after time at Bob Jones University, and then getting my bachelor's finished up at Lancaster Bible College, going to New Tribes Mission Institute to study to be a tribal Bible translator and church planter. My kids, by like age 10, are probably going to know more about the origins of Christianity than I did after all those decades. And that's amazing. Blows my mind. They know it's not real. They know it's not real. We talk. They know it's pretend. It's make believe. And I love that they talk a lot about wanting to be scientists. Like, I want to have a science. I want to be a scientist. I want to think about this scientifically. They love Neil deGrasse Tyson. They love Cosmos. Um, they love learning about the universe, and just to bring that sparkle into their eyes is so valuable. And to me, going back, from into sexuality, like, if you have a choice to make of, I want to be screwing like a rabbit every day. Of course, who doesn't? I do, for sure. Um, it's funny. Years ago, when I worked for a financial firm in Philadelphia, and there was this old guy that I worked with, and I don't even know why he was working there. I think he retired. He was just bored at home or something, and he got in through a temp agency. But because he didn't really care if they fired him, he'd say whatever the hell he wanted to. He had no no qualms about speaking his mind, and he was kind of a dirty old man. But he used to talk about, he's like, Tim, you need to get married and have sex once a day and twice on Sundays. He's like, I'd laugh at him and just be like, Tony, you can't say that at work. But he said a lot worse than that. But you do want all these beautiful things in life, and yet there is something that's much more precious and much more important, valuable, and high priority: protecting your kids' minds. And if I have to give up intimacy, whether it's forever or for a period of time, to protect my kids' minds and to give them the best shot at reality, to, again, when they're older, let them pick. If they want to be a Christian, fine, I'll respect it. We'll have some very serious conversations about how they figured out that this one mythology is the real mythology, and how it's not copied from Homer and not copied from, Euripides, Bacchae, and so forth. But we'll have some deep conversations about why they concluded that this is not mythology. But I would still love them and respect them if they became Christians, but just to give them a chance and say, you are free to decide for yourself. Just like you might say, you're free to decide if you want a hug from Uncle so and so. If you feel comfortable, give them the biggest bear hug ever. If you don't want to be touched by that person, it's your body. You decide. Same thing with your mind. Body autonomy, thought autonomy. It's your mind. If you don't want, and I tell them, think of it like a thought bubble, and you get to push things back. Get out. And we practice it. Get out of my bubble. Get out of my bubble. You get to decide who gets in. And when, I ask him at night when I tuck him in, do you want a hug? Sure, Daddy, I'd love one. Yay. Who wants a hug? I do. I do. Oh, I don't want one. No problem. You won't. If you don't want a hug, I won't hug you. It's your body. You get to pick. Same concept. You have to give them the freedom to pick with their mind. Doesn't mean that they get to be, hurting each other. There's certainly some rules and boundaries that you set up at home so they don't kick each other's teeth in, and hurt each other and make each other scream. But in terms of religion and this indoctrination garbage, this stuff that says, there is an ancient Canaanite demigod named Yahweh, and he has a son named Jesus. And there's the third person, there's three masculine characters in the Godhead, the Holy Spirit here. There's three men God. This is the real deal. This is the only thing that really matters in life, is making that God happy. And you didn't do it, but Jesus made him happy. So if you believe in Jesus, you're effectively in the club. He's happy with you because he's happy with Jesus, because Jesus paid it all. Telling kids that that's the only ultimate reality, and that this life really doesn't matter, that it only matters when you get to go see Yahweh in heaven. That's some sick ass stuff, guys. That's some sick stuff. I mean, eat his flesh and drink his blood. And if you don't love him back, he loves you so much, but if you don't love him back, he'll burn you in hell forever. I mean, we're talking about some sick psycho stuff. And yet that's what they want to tell your kids. That's worth giving up, screwing like rabbits for. That's worth anything for. They matter. Their minds matter. Their little hearts matter. Protect their minds and hearts. I definitely want to do some more digging on protecting kids' minds. And also, I should say, I've got a whole bunch of notes prepared for songs that I've written. A lot of songs protecting kids' minds. I did one a few months ago, but I've got a lot more. I lack time. I lack time so much. But I did want to wrap up today's conversation talking about time and more about trading. But just to give the last personal note for today, and I've got a lot more I'll probably wish I'd said later, but you know how that is. The minute you end record, you think, oh, I should have said that. But I lack time. And I said that a while ago in a bunch of videos, and people said, stop talking about it because it's, broken record. We know you're busy. We're all busy. But I just said it more to be respectful of people, to say, look, I understand some of you have waited for a month or 2 or 3 or 6 for an email from me. I'm sorry. And I was trying to kind of gloss over that a little bit and say, like, I really am sorry. I'm not ignoring you. And I say that even now. There's a lot of you still waiting for emails from me. I'm sorry. If I emailed everybody back that I should and could, I wouldn't publish a video for the next 6 months. I've got hundreds of emails from people waiting to talk to me. I'm not that special, but I appreciate that they're reaching out. But this is where I want to bring up to the final update. Harmonic Atheist, the harmonic part refers to trading stocks, currencies. And I study it nonstop. Years ago, I was a broker. I'm not anymore, but I was a broker for a trading company. And it's been many years since that. But at the end of that time, I began to really study it, because they don't, while you're there just to do a job. You're not there to learn how to trade, really, which is ironic. But I'll tell that story in detail someday. But suffice it to say, at the end of my time being a stockbroker, I began to really study, like, how are the people that are making money, like lots of it making money, how are they doing this? And I began to learn some different things, but some of the things would drop my jaw. I'd be like, whoa, that's amazing. That's crazy. And that process just kept on hitting, kind of like deconversion. Like, you're like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't know this was in the Bible. I didn't know that was copied from this source. And it just keeps on building up and adding up and blah, blah, blah. But it got to a point with the trading where eventually some pieces began to come together. I was like, this isn't just gambling. I mean, trading will always be, in one sense, a gamble, but there's a rhythm and a rhyme to this, and specifically the word harmonic. Harmonic refers to harmonic trading patterns. If you're not familiar with that, YouTube, Scott Carney's harmonic trading YouTube channel. I think he started doing this in the 70s or so, 80s. But there are patterns based on Fibonacci ratios, and if you don't know what that is, I'm sorry. I'll go into more detail later. But Fibonacci's and the ratios create patterns. And some of them will look like butterfly and bat wings. If you want to go to Google Images and type in harmonic trading patterns, you probably see what I'm talking about. But those patterns are a piece of the puzzle for how trading works, at least from my perspective. I weave together a couple different things. I'm just going to list them off here and with that explanation, and I'll tell you more about them again in a future video down the line. I'm looking at Fibonacci levels, just the straight horizontal Fibonacci levels. I'm looking at the Fibonacci ratios of the harmonic patterns. I do something that I've never seen before. Call it proprietary, who knows? It's a Fibonacci pitchfork. You know what a pitchfork is, where it's got prongs. Well, instead of the harmonic ratios like this, where there's the different levels, you angle it, same Fibonacci ratios, but it looks like a pitchfork that goes across up and down. You can change which angle it's at. The market surprisingly respects Fibonacci pitchforks if you get the ratios correct. So there's also, of course, floor traded pivots, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, you can Google that. Floor traded pivots are a big deal, very big deal. Trend lines, hitting the back side of trend lines after they're broken. And I certainly weave in a little bit of the more of the lagging indicators, such as Bollinger Bands. But when you weave those together, they do create a really decent setup where you're like, okay, the likelihood of this trade working out really good. And it's starting to make even more sense. It's kind of like, remember Neo in the Matrix? I can't do a video without having at least one Matrix reference. I'm sorry. In the end, when Neo, the end of the first one, where he finally sees the Matrix, the green code, it's like you're finally seeing what's really there. And I feel like it's starting to get to that point with trading for me, where I'm just trading in a micro account. You don't make or lose much money with it, but the patterns, the ways that it moves, it's like a wave. You begin to see the patterns, as how soon it's going to come and where it's going to go to, and when there's going to be an occasional big lift followed by little lifts. You begin to get in tune with that. It's like your heartbeats, match up. And it's working. It's starting to work out. And I'm going to, obviously, if it continues to go well, I'm going to increase that. And my goal, bringing this back to the concept of time, my goal is to wrap up my time do my day job, which is taking so much of my time away, and eventually just trade full time. And if I did that, my trading style is much more what they call swing trader, not day trader. So I'm not in and out every day. I'm in and out every 2 or 3 days of a specific currency pair or whatever, crypto. And when you do that, you're talking about just taking a few minutes here or there to place a trade and you walk away, which leaves me a lot of time to do the YouTube channel. And that's my goal. My goal is to say, is there any way that this year, 2022, I could find a way to trade myself to a point where I don't have to be rich? I mean, obviously everybody wants to be rich, but I'm not looking to be rich. I'm just looking to make a living and to be safe, be secure. But can I achieve at least basic security with this? Can I be consistent 8, 9 times out of 10 with my trading? And I'm starting to get there. If I can do that, then my goal is to eventually leave my day job, trade, and do the YouTube channel full time. And if I do that, I will be answering your emails the same exact week, hopefully the same exact day or within 24 hours of an email. I will hopefully be producing content where the interview that you see posted happened, that week or even, a day or so ago. I would love to get to that point. And honestly, I'm backed up. I've got hundreds of people who've asked to interview on my channel. And I feel bad about that, but I would love to get to a point where I can say, yeah, but how about tomorrow? How about, next Tuesday? Instead of right now, it's like, well, how does April look? How does May look? 3 or 4 months away from now, just being able to do it live. Like, let's do it. Yeah. Not live, you know what I mean? But just, real soon, let's do it tomorrow. And to get people's stories like that, and to be able to do repeats where some people that I talked to last year say, hey, it's been 12, 18 months. Can we do it again? Let's talk about how your journey's been going. Where are you with things? What have you learned? How have you healed? To do those follow-ups, I need time to do it. And so I just wanted to ask you to be my cheering section. Cheer me on, ask me occasionally, 3 to 6 months, how's it going? Are you getting closer? Is your trading getting any better? Are you making a difference? And I will admit too, I have a side dream with trading. I don't know how many atheists are really giving, like super giving. And there's obviously people like, I think Bill Gates is an atheist, or at least he's a practice, not too practicing of religion, I think. But I'm not sure how many atheists are just known for just overwhelming philanthropy. Hopefully it's a lot more than I think. But I don't know too many people that I've heard of like that. I'm going to aim to try to bring, like in the next 3 to 5 years, to get so good at trading that eventually the income does get exceeded and surpassed enough that I could start to really give. I mean, what a beautiful thing to be able to start to give a lot away. When I was a Christian, my heart burned to help the families in need and the single moms who were struggling, who did, it was, pay the electric bill, or, get your groceries, which one this month, just to say, like, you should be focused on loving your kids, not on whether you can feed them. You should be focused on loving them and giving them the beauty of life and taking them to the park. And to be able to say, like, I'm going to start giving and start giving $5,000, $10,000 a month to some of these charities, secular charities, but charities that help people, really help people, just to give to directly to people, to people, individuals that I'm like, I can see you're struggling. Your car broke down and you don't have money to fix it. And you won't have money to fix it for 6 months. How are you going to live without a car? And to be able to just go into that situation with the love, not the love of Jesus and the love of this Yahweh silliness, but just the love of people to people. Say, I care, not because I have to, not because I get a reward in heaven, but just because I do. I just choose to love you. I choose to think I want to do the best for you and bless your socks off. That's a long-term goal. Fingers crossed. I really, really hope I can get better at trading. I know people that make 5 to 10,000 a day trading in their pajamas, I'm sure. Like clockwork. I mean, every single day. I know somebody about 10 minutes away from here. He does this. He's been doing it for years, and 5 to 10,000 a day is like clockwork. It's just peanuts. He does it for an hour or two, and he's done for his day. Trading is an amazing career if you can do it right. It can also make you lose your bank account if you're not careful. But it's my goal. It's my passion. I love it. I study it, and it's getting better. So I'll keep you up to date if it does cross into some good things in the future. That's it for today. I know I've been rambling a little bit. Thank you for keeping with me if you stayed this long. Thank you for your emails. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for your patience. I know some of you have been asking, when are you going to interview me? When are you going to answer me? Whatever. It's not personal. Please don't take any of it personally. It's definitely just a time issue. I've got 4 little kids. This is that energy. I have a job where I work days and sometimes nights. I'm trying to do this big project, this huge PowerPoint, just endless things, and just the things of life, going out and getting groceries and, talking to your family and so forth. There's a lot on all of our plates, myself included. And I kind of feel like I'm working 2 or 3 jobs at once. I'd like to boil that down to just 2: trading and the YouTube channel. So thank you for bearing with me through this. Sorry, there's weeks when I don't publish something. I'm trying hard to make the time. It's a top priority. I love you all. I love the community. And I do want to get this to be a point where my voice is bigger in this, not my voice, but the channel, the idea of other people's voices, and the information, the voice of the information, the voice of people's stories. I want it to be powerful. I want people to think of Harmonic Atheist as a place to go, not because they think I'm anything special, because I'm just a guy, but to say this is a conduit. This is a place where, we were beggars, and this is a place, this is a beggar who found the bread, and he's willing to tell us where to find the bread. And that's a beautiful goal for me. I want to find the other beggars where to find the bread, and to let them know that the bread that they think they've been eating, that's bread. The the Lord's table is a table of poison bread, and I've got some good bread, and it's a beautiful thing. So we're gonna just keep on making small efforts with the hope that they do add up on the channel, add up in trading. And just a final note too, going back to my personal life. When they try to beat you down, be a better person if you can. I know it's hard. It's really hard, and it's painful, but be a better person. Rise above it if you possibly can. Do some healing. Put up your boundaries. Put up the walls where you need to not lose yourself. But you're who you are. You were who you are before this Jesus stuff, and you're who you are after it. You're the kind of person that has love in your heart, I hope, wants to just bless people, who wants to be patient and gracious and kind. Let's be more gracious and more kind and more loving than these Christians and their ancient mythology. So let's outlove them. They wanted to love us into the kingdom. Let's love them out of their Stockholm syndrome. Let's love them out of their bizarre mythology. Let's love them into reality. If they choose not to love us back, what can you say? I still call it the best life ever, to live a life of sacrificial love, of patience, of kindness. And again, everybody's story is different, so I'm not trying to prescribe what you should do, but do your best while you're in relationships. Do your best to love with your whole heart, to be patient, kind, and to understand that this is painful for them. To try to put yourself in their shoes. I know a lot of you do it because you talking about that, so I totally think it's cool that so many of you are doing that. But there are going to be some people that are going to be absolutely obstinately antagonistic to us. And we have this instinct, the fight or flight. We're going to want to fight. Like, get off my back, stop being a jerk and awful rude person to me. I deserve better. I've been through so much. Treat me right. And they're not gonna. They're just not going to. Christians don't have that ability. If you don't love Jesus, they don't know how to treat you. You're an anomaly. They feel like if you had Jesus and you don't have him now, you're an enemy. And they really hate that. They hate that so much. Try your best. My encouragement, my parting arrow here, parting encouragement. Try to love them more than they love you. Try to be more gracious. Outgrace them. And maybe some of you will find some beautiful things happening where you never would have thought it. And suddenly your spouse comes to you and says, maybe in tears, I just woke up. I can't believe it, but your journey, you went through it all by yourself. My journey has just started. I need your help because I'm lost and I don't know where to go now. But it's suddenly something just clicked in my head for the first time. Christianity does not sound right anymore. This sounds so wrong and so bizarre. The Bible does not sound divine. It sounds entirely man-made. And they'll be maybe shaking inside. I don't know what to do with this. I am so horrified at where I'm at, and I'm horrified that I didn't listen to you or care about you when you went through it. But I'm going through it now. Can you please help me? Can you please forgive me for not listening and caring? And to be the kind of person to say, oh, I forgave you a long time ago. I understand that was not you speaking in one sense. You made choices, and yes, people have to be held accountable, but I saw it as the indoctrination speaking, or at least I tried to see it that way. And yes, I did forgive you a long time ago. And if you're willing to now make things right, oh, there's nothing to forgive. Let's just hit the reset button from this point on, and let's start to think this through together again as a team. Let's start to heal from Christianity and heal our relationships as a team. I'm going to hope that for some of us. I know it won't happen for a lot of us. I know. I'm being optimistic. I'm the hopeful. I'm the endless optimist. But I gotta hope. I'll hope till the day I die. I'll hope that the humans around us can do better than this. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. I'm trying to do better at everything I'm doing for the channel. Thank you for your patience. We're going to have hopefully a knockout 2022. I'm hoping this is a good year in a lot of ways. And I wish you the best on your journey, especially those of you in painful situations. I really do wish you the best. I wish you good things this year. Thanks again. Love you all.